So streamlining it back to family and relationships, family building, and so on and so forth. How do you feel like ultimately it's all affects us?
Which part?
If we were talking about hip hop, or even the topic title. Um,
I mean, so like with hip hop being one lane, right? It has its effect in both polarities.
mm,
You know what I'm saying? So like there are brothers and sisters who are delivering their poetry, right? Um, whether it be in musical format or whatever, uh, to promote consciousness awareness, and then you got others of us who are promoting consciousness degradation through what they're
right.
saying,
Right.
right? And it could all be based on, you know, how they understand their own consciousness. And hip hop, um, it is, if you want to use the word, like we kind of went through the definitions of religious and spirituality, you know what I'm saying? But it is probably, one of the more pervasive outlets that we have to connect to religious entities, right? Or, spiritual awareness.
Mm. Now, how do you think this affects traditional values and contemporary ideas?
So give me a traditional value.
Uh,
Yeah.
like I said last week, a traditional value definitely depend on the culture that you say that you come from.
Yeah.
So, being like myself, being from the islands, the Caribbean islands, and then coming to the United States, uh, Christian family.
Mm-hmm.
In my adulthood, everything, all that segued into the Hebrew Israelite. Some would even call it a Jewish
Yeah.
uh, frame of thinking. Uh, it's like, let's just say, I'm just gonna pull a random topic: modest dressing.
Yeah.
How does hip hop affect the perspective of dressing modestly, and how does that affect the family structure?
I mean, well, obviously, we're influenced by what we see.
Okay.
So, let's just say dressing modestly, right? That's not really tied to like getting money.
To getting money.
No.
So
So like, you know, hip hop has a culture and a dress to it,
Right.
right? Um, there are certain attires, right, that drive a certain state of awareness.
okay.
You know what I mean? So if you want to use dressing modestly as one, right? I I don't really know if what I see in hip hop is what we consider modest
O-
by definition.
Okay. Now, that's current.
Yeah,
Well, and it's been like that for several years.
several
So I
years.
would have to ask. So Kane, like, okay, when it started, from what I see, and when they show old videos, and what I saw in the '80s, you know, you still had people
Covered up.
that were covered
To a degree.
to a degree. It was flashy,
Yeah.
Okay.
gold chains, rings,
Yeah.
gold teeth. Um, unless at a part where you could dress like I don't want to say a bum, but regular and be like
Right.
a hot rapper.
But I,
Right.
I think that a lot of that style was attached to status.
What do you mean?
So like normally people dress in certain vernaculars, right, to promote their social status.
Okay.
And I don't think that that's a dynamic that has changed over time, right?
Right. Okay.
The demonstration of your social status is, okay, this is where I'm at, right? So like if you see me, if I got gold teeth, with diamonds in them and stuff like that, I got four finger
Rings.
rings, the gold ropes,
Turkish links.
all that kind of stuff, right?
Mhm.
Then you know what, I've made it, or at least it
Okay.
looks like I've
I
made
made
it.
Right.
Right.
Whatever that means to somebody else.
So, from what I understand, right, hip hop was started from people that were, one could say, down pressed, downtrodden. Different terms of that. They weren't really the ideal in society, and they took nothing and turn it into something.
Right.
That whole concept of taking some records and scratching them.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? And then going from that to having parties and DJing and so on and so forth. So the status is like, look, I don't have anything, but I could make it. You know, I've turned that not having into look at me now.
Right. And that's something to have when you've never had anything.
Right. Which is the American way.
It's a way.
Or, that way.
It's interesting, you know, the whole concept of it. So I've met people throughout my military career and being in the Navy, right? And, you know, I've heard them tell me stories about go to America, the streets are paved with gold. And as a child, I'm talking about they were a lot older when I spoke to them, but as a child, they believed it.
Right.
And their family believed it. Like, yo, go to America. It's money there. It's you know, we live in a third world, as they call it, whatever world country. America's where it's at. And the dream, of course, is getting a nice big house with a white picket fence and a dog, and so on and so forth. That was, I guess, from a Eurocentric perspective, that was the American dream. You know what I mean? And a lot of people that look like us, we didn't really see that. And we didn't necessarily, I'm not speaking for all, I'm speaking for some that didn't come from that. So they had to, like I said, take nothing and turn it into something. And like I said, during that time, it was a big shift in the family dynamics.
Right.
Yeah, it's a big difference, especially when you see you may not be doing as well as most of those rappers, but they weren't doing all that well either. You know, it's just maybe a step above, not even a step sometimes, but they had to look the part. So in that structure versus hip hop versus the traditional family at that time, you know, it was, you know, we I don't know about nobody else, but here we dressed. You know, we had like, you had to have your duck heads on, your penny loafers, your button downs and stuff like that. And then you can switch it up.
Right.
And bring your hip hop style in. You had your tracksuit, your Adidas tracksuit, or your Nike tracksuit with your Pumas on, or with your shell toe Adidas on. Right. But you still had the fashion. The fashion has always been in what they would call African American culture, especially up to, I'm gonna say probably around about from the 20s on up. It's always been a fashionable thing. Now, and I think a lot of that come from, you know, being in a downtrodden state that you didn't have anything. Right. But now once you can get more money, you start dressing a little better. You start to go out and, I look at that fashion, I want that fashion. So right. with the structure of it, of course it changes.
Right.
But, you know, we always dressed up on Easter Sunday.
That's true. And I think I'm gonna be angel's advocate in this today. You know, I look at
this episode.
When I say again
in this episode,
when I look at a lot of things in the past, I see, for example, let's say the 20s, moving forward, I see a lot of brothers with button ups, ties, pants to the waist, and for those of you who don't know, your waistline actually starts where your belly button is. Right. Take a line and go all the way across. So yeah, your pants is high up on your waist. Shine shoes, hats, fedoras, so on and so forth. And I'm talking about from the older men to young men. Mm-hmm. And as I come up to, you know, the walks, you know, when I say the walks, I'm talking about like Montgomery, Alabama in the 60s and so on and so forth. I still see this. So how do we go from that state, you know, and we're talking about the church. Now, they're still in the church state. Then we hit the 70s, the hip-hop arrives, and I understand there's been influences and so on and so forth, but now we got young men with their pants below their butts.
Right.
I'm not knocking anybody for it. I'm just saying it's a very different mindset. You know, when you come to family dynamics, family relations, so on and so forth, and sometimes it could be cringeworthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I think that. Oh, go ahead.
Well, a lot of that. I'll say this. and this is just me coming from, because I came up in the 80s as a teenager. We didn't dress like that. We didn't have our clothes hanging off us like that. But it was a group of people that did that. And it wasn't us.
Okay.
We didn't dress like that. No, when we step out, we were clean. You had your stuff buttoned up, you were neat. But I've seen other groups, yeah, they pants down.
Mm-hmm.
This is in the 80s. We didn't do that. I don't know if we ran around to try to copy them or whatever, but I don't know. I don't know where it came from. I'm about to say this. They were doing that because I was there. I know.
Right.
Because you can, they're in school with us, especially with me. They was in school. At my school, when I was a teenager, it was more them than us. You know what I'm saying? I didn't go to an all-black school. I came from Norfolk, which is kind of like more African-American people in it. But I ended up moving to Chesapeake. So you have a lot more, Caucasian people there. So, and the school I went to at that time, it was more them there than versus us.
And you saying they pants were sagging.
And they pants be sagging. Yo, I didn't, I'm coming from, let me tell you, I came from Norfolk, and Norfolk at that time was it was, especially when you went to school, it was like, you got to dress when you come to school.
Right.
You got to have your stuff right, and that's how we always played it. But when I went over there and I was looking at that, I was like, man, what is that? But you saw the brothers, we were still clean.
Okay.
Pants up, looking good, looking fresh, looking whatever. But those, the Caucasian, they weren't rolling like that.
That's interesting, because I always, it's always been rumored that, it comes from like more of a prison mentality.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Sagging pants and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But now the dynamics is, the women accept it.
Yeah.
Or young women. I don't know about older women, but
Right.
I seen some. That's it's an acceptable way of carrying oneself. And I want to know, is that a part of the hip hop culture? Is that a part of just the African American culture? Like, what is that?
I think that it's attached to a social status. So normally,
Quantify that, sir.
so normally, like what's pervasive and what's seen on TV and what's attached to dollar signs and nice houses and nice cars, everything that's very material is are in most cases people that if we just using music as one lane, right, are people that dress like that. You know what I mean? So like, so for an example, right, like a lot of the young people that I see in my profession, right, like the goal is to like get your lyrics on paper so you can make it,
Okay.
right? And like that's how they dress. I see like very, very big, huge bubble coats and very, very tight pants that don't fit around the waist.
Say it one more time. Sorry.
So one outfit I've seen before is like a very, very huge bubble coat,
Right.
a shirt that might be too small, and pants that are not symmetrical with your waistline.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? And again, like that idea or that the value that's placed on that style of dress, I think that is attached to, the idea of a certain social status.
Okay. So, man, so modern. So would you say modern? Because you could say hip hop, then you could say like the industry, that industry. It's like it went from art imitating life. We're rapping about situations and circumstances, right? And as we move forward in time, it's like,